G'day everyone, Darcy here off the top of the show. Just to let you know that we did record this before the Sean Darcy news on Thursday, February 6th. If you haven't heard that already, Sean Darcy unfortunately having ankle surgery. A minor surgery by all reports, but a surgery nonetheless. Fremantle's hoping he's going to be available for the early rounds of the season, but he is in significant doubt for round one. Just factor that into the discussion. It's quite ironic looking back, so I didn't want to take it out. Loving Shawnee Darcy and the way he's been looking this preseason, but unfortunately that is a setback that's going to affect some of our rankings, in particular mine, but it shouldn't affect Lekdog's too much, who we are going to be talking about on the show today, as he did factor in the big fella's injury concerns within his ranking. So anyway, kick back, relax. I hope you enjoy the show. If you have been enjoying the extra draft content, if you're a SuperCoach drafter, and you obviously are, if you're listening to this show, please rate and review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Give us a like on YouTube. The support really does help because we are trying to build this podcast up. You've been noticing lots more shows this preseason, so I really appreciate the support. If you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. But sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. G'day and welcome back to Drafted, the official SuperCoach Draft show right here on the official podcast feed. It's your boy Darcy, alongside my fellow SuperCoach Draft enthusiasts. We've got Patch and Lekdog back for another episode, and we're going to be talking all things RUCK rankings on this show, going through Lekdog's top 18 ranks. We're going pretty deep in the RUCK department, Lekdog, but there are some leagues out there that like to go deep, or dare I say, go the two RUCKs, Lek.
Ugh. I mean, do it at your own peril, because that and the flex position will severely impact how early or late ruckmen get taken in your draft, because there are just not that many to go around.
Yes, we have been going through our ranks. We started with the midfielders. If you missed that podcast, that was a longer one. I expect this one to be a little bit shorter than that one. But joining us again, we have Patch. Welcome aboard, Patch.
Hello. Delighted to be here to chat about my favourite position, the RUCKS.
Well, without any further ado, let's get started. We're going to go through picks 1 to 5 to start with, 5 to 10 and so on. Let's go, Lekdog. Start with your top 5 RUCKS for season 2025 in SuperCoach.
Yes, my top 5 rucks this season. It'll already surprise people. Number 1 is Max Gawn in Tier 1 on his own. Number 2 is Tristan Cherry in Tier 2 on his own. And then rounding out the top 5 in Tier 3 is Tim English, Brody Grundy, and Tom De Koning.
All right, keen to talk about this. I mean, at the top tier, even though we might, as it gets deeper, it's not as exciting a discussion with the rucks, but up the top end, these guys are the uber premiums. Right at the top end of your draft, you might be picking Max Gawn pretty early, even Tristan Cherry. I do want to talk about that top 2 debate, Gawn versus Cherry, because Cherry finished the season on fire last year. Was there any consideration? I mean, I see here, as you said, your tiers, you've got Gawn on his own. There is an argument that Cherry should be on the same tier level, I reckon, this year, Lekdog.
There is an argument. So I'll start with Max Gawn. He's consistent. Every single week he'll give you 5 marks. A couple of them will be behind the ball. He'll contest the ruck. He'll have a couple of tackles. And, he'll have 18 to 20 disposals. Max Gawn is just consistent Max Gawn. Your only potential question mark over him is games played, because he's always going to miss 1, maybe 2 games. But I think he'll be the highest averaging ruckman this year. And I've got Cherry slightly lower. So yes, he played more games than Max Gawn last year. Yes, he did score more total points than Max Gawn last year. And yes, I did have him at R1 last year, all year. So I understand he's good. However, my biggest question mark over him is the ability to recreate what he did last year, because he had a massive jump, and the main one that people are talking about is the tackle numbers. He jumped from a career average of about 3 tackles a game to 7.5 tackles per game last year. Was that an outlier, or was that the new norm for Tristan Cherry? A slight step back in that tackle number alone will impact his output this year, and I suspect it's going to be pretty hard to maintain that massive number. All the other stuff, the marks, the disposals, the ruck contest, I think that's all consistent for Cherry, but those tackle numbers, there's a few points in those.
It's big. I'm keen to hear your thoughts, Patch, as well. The Gawn versus Sherry debate right at the top of the draft. I mean, you'd be happy with either of these guys, but where do you see that landing?
I've got Cherry at 1 and Gawn at 2, and I've got them in the same tier. So I think, Cherry, he's still a baby by RUCK standards. He's still, 25, 26 coming into this season.
Yep.
I think as much as, that there's every chance that the tackle numbers could be an outlier and he could see a drop-off in tackles, I think there's still natural improvement to come from Cherry. And even if that's a 5% improvement across every stat category, that's still going to be enough to offset, I think, any major drop in average or total output of points. Maybe he drops, a 1 or 2 average, over the season, or he drops, 50 to 100 points compared to last year, but I still certainly see as much room for upside as I see as room for downside in Cherry's growth, and I'd be happy with either of them. If I'm splitting hairs, I'm probably going Cherry just because of the games played. I don't want one of those games that's missed to be a final or be a must-win game to get me into the top 8, or, a game that's going to avoid me getting a punishment at the end of the year. I think I'd just rather the consistency with, I know Cherry's had some injury problems way back, but I think Gawn's getting on a little bit. He worries me just that tiny bit that Father Time might start catching up with him. I think if not this year, then certainly by next year, we'll be having a pretty big discussion about Father Time and Max Gawn, but I think I'm struggling to split them.
Yeah.
You can clip this, Darcy. Max Gawn is the LeBron James of AFL. And what I mean by that is I don't think age is going to touch him. I think he's smart in how he uses his body. He rests on the field, and a lot of his points come from the stuff he does behind the ball, taking intercept marks. I'm not worried about Max Gawn in the slightest, but I can understand that 1 or 2, these are the 2 best ruckmen, I think, in the comp.
Yeah, I currently have Cherry at number 1, but I also have them in the same tier. But it'd be interesting, that tiering them separately, I think, is a distinguished point there for your draft there, Lekdog, that you're happy going Gawn, much higher than Cherry, seemingly.
While we're on these two, where do you take them overall? Do you go in the top 3? Do you go Bond, Dacos, Gawn for you, or do you look at a ruckman in the top 5? What's your strategy for rucks? Do you like punting them? Do you like grabbing one early and not worrying about it? Do you just middle around and pick up a like a Lloyd Meek or whatever in the middle? How do you go about picking a ruck?
For me, Gawn or Cherry, I'm taking with my first pick, unless I have pick 1 or 2, in which case I'm taking Bont and Dacos in almost every circumstance. If you don't get a Gawn or Cherry with your first pick, then I think you can probably wait to your 2nd, 3rd, 4th pick onwards to get a ruckman. But I think these 2 guys do separate themselves from the rest of the pack when we look back at season 2025. So, jump early on one of these 2 guys. If they're your first player, I think you're going to be happy. The other guys, you can probably let slip a little bit further.
Let's talk about a couple other players in the top 5. Tim English, you've got at 3. Bit of a down year for his standards, but you've got him bouncing back.
Yeah, I do. I think he's still really solid. Yes, last year was a bit of a downslide, but he's still got that Dogs midfield to hit it to. Even with Treloar out, who we spoke about in the last podcast, there's guys like Matt Kennedy and stuff that have come in, can potentially fill roles. So I think he's still got the opportunity there. Another year under his belt. I think he'll be solid. I'm not sure he's going to necessarily get back to that 128 average he had in 2023, but somewhere around the 110 range would not shock me.
All right, Tom de Koning. You're a Blues man. We've had lots of discussions about Tom de Koning over the past few years as someone that's owned him in a keeper league. What are your thoughts this year? There'll be some people, not naming names, are very, very high on him this year. What point would you be taking him? What do you see his output being? Do you see Carlton playing him as a sole ruck? Talk to me about the wonderful hair that is attached to Tom de Koning.
And why do I have him 3 currently in my ranks, Leck?
we have him 3 because when he's the solo ruck, he's really, really, really good for Carlton. Now, a past me might have said that he's not a ruckman and that he'll end up playing behind the ball as an intercept defender in his career. And I still think age 35, Tom De Koning might do that. It's upside. The biggest query I have, because I've got him 5th, so I think he can score the points. I think he has the role. The lingering question I have in the back of my head is just Fossey consistently says he wants the 2 ruck setup. I don't necessarily know if they've been rolling with that this preseason. Tom De Koning announced himself last year as the number 1 sort of ruckman at Carlton. I do think on a holistic view, he's actually better off as sharing the ruck duty with someone else and being that energizer rather than the slog ruckman throughout the whole game. If Pitto plays then and you take him with your 5th pick, then you've ruined your draft. If Pitto doesn't play and you take him with your 5th pick, then, geez, you might have won your draft. It's just so tough. I don't know what Vossi's going to do.
Yes, well, panicking super coaches is the Carlton social media team putting out there today. Pitto is heading into the 2025 season fit and firing with a muscle emoji and putting out a video, an interview with Pitt Ned about how he's keen to impact this year. So
don't pick Tom De Koning.
I might have to bump him down a bit just due to that risk. But no, I think that the ceiling is tantalising. Whether we get it for a full season and whether it is solo is the question mark. So fair enough for putting him 5. It's, probably going to be an up and down season, but you'd still be happy taking him. You've got Grundy at 4. Happy with that, just replicating what he did last year. Now let's move through 6.
I just very quickly, I know we've got to rush, but Brodie Grundy was in Classic last year, was maligned and traded out and traded in and traded out. He ended up being the 4th ranked ruckman. He's just really, really good. That's why he's 4th. All right, so after Tom De Koning, who I think is an upside play, you've got the following guys. So you got Toby Nankervis sitting at 6th in Tier 4. Also in Tier 4 is Rowan Marshall and Lloyd Meek. Now, Rowan Marshall on a per-game basis is probably the best of this bunch. This ranking was done after he had that preseason injury concern. So he's been bumped down. Nank, he is going to miss 3 weeks every year, but he's going to score really well in the games he does play. And then Lloyd Meek just had a sneaky good season last year for Hawthorn. And in the same way, back when we talked about midfielders, Dosh, you talked about the upside in that Hawks midfield. I think Lloyd Meek really has an opportunity here. Averaged 105 last year across 19 games. He plays 23 games. He becomes like the 5th best ruckman.
Yeah, it's a huge call. I think the Rowan Marshall, did you see the news coming out today that Ross Lyon, I think it was reported on AFL.com, said that he will definitely play round 1. So some of the injury concerns that you might be speaking about, would that change, just quickly on Rowan Marshall, would that adjust your rankings from him down at 7th?
It might bump him up a couple of spots. So Roma, every year he's played 23 games the last 2 years for an average of 113 across those 2 years. That's elite numbers. So if Ross is not lying to me, Roma jumps up above Tom De Koning. He becomes a safer pick. I still probably take Brodie Grundy and Tim English ahead of him. But again, he becomes a Tier 3 player if he's fit. It does concern me that they signed a mature age ruckman and they've got seemingly a lot of ruck depth, like just old dudes who really want to play. I don't know. I've got some question marks over what Ross says as well. Yeah.
Pat, you got any thoughts on the 6 through 10?
Look, I think Rowan Marshall's quite good. We haven't, Lecky didn't talk about 9 and 10 there, but we got Jared Witts and Sean Darcy there in the 5th tier. I think Sean Darcy's, obviously there's the injury cloud, which makes it a bit hard. I do really like Sean Darcy, especially if you can pick up Luke Jackson with him. I want you to talk for a second about that. Handcuffing as a concept is around for drafters where you take the number 1 ruckman if it's Rowan Marshall and you take Harry Boyd very late, or if you can take, Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. I'm intrigued as to what your thoughts are around Shrek. Had a difficult last year with injury. Would you consider like if he's fit and firing and dominates preseason, does that move him up? Do you need to take Jackson if you're taking Darcy as well? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Sean Darcy's had one season in his career where he played more than 20 games. And in all those other seasons, he averages about 15. So I just can't believe that he's fit and firing. I know he's been over to Qatar, maybe, somewhere like that.
He's back. And just before you continue answering, I would just love you to go to Instagram, find Sean Darcy's Instagram and look at his latest post, because me, after seeing that, I've adjusted him right up. He's not gone below top 5 for me now. After seeing the big tank Sean Darcy, the man is shredded. The man is an absolute unit this preseason. He was training straight back in the main group upon returning from Qatar. So, look, we know what Elliot Yeo happened after he went to Qatar last year. Not excluding this preseason for poor Elliot Yeo, but a bounce back, rejuvenated season. Gosh, I think Big Shrek could be in for a big year this year.
I'm not shaming him, but it looks like he's lost 40 kilos.
Yeah.
He looks like a different person.
He's a beast.
Yeah, so I guess, were the injuries caused by the weight that he was carrying, or are they caused by something else? That's the question you've got to ask. In terms of handcuffing, Patch, I think you're going to struggle to get both Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson just because of how thin the forward line is. And Luke Jackson won't feature in these rankings because I'm considering him a forward. But the concept of handcuffing is really important. And it's the reason I've had Riley O'Brien and Kieran Strachan in my keeper league for the last 6 years, and I'm just waiting for Strawn to break through and get into that main Adelaide Crows team. But basically, as you said, the concept is if one misses, you've got the guy that's going to replace him already on your team.
Yeah. I've got a differing rank with you as well on Jared Witts. I'm off Jared Witts this season. I reckon he's going to start making way for Ned Moyle and Ethan Reid as well to play mostly forward and chop out. I reckon he'll kind of break down at some point. He's done that the last couple of years, and I just think Moyle will just hold his spot, which I'm not picking Ned Moyle. I'm not drafting Ned Moyle, but I'm right off Jared Witts this year. I reckon this is possibly the last hurrah we see for the big man.
Yeah,
that's tough. Yeah, it could go either way, couldn't it? Because if he's
performing,
he's locked into the best 22 and he's not moving. But if they decide to, Moyle is a rising ruckman. They want to keep him there as well long term. So that's a really tough dilemma for the Suns. But I think I'm probably along with Lek in. I think I have him. I still have Witts 10th in my ranks just because. Yeah, if he is fit, and I know it's a big, it's an if nowadays rather than a guarantee, but he still just does all the things that you want out of a SuperCoach ruckman, and the hit outs to advantage in particular. But
I've got no evidence. It's just a gut feeling that I'm like, I just don't. I'm worried. I don't want to pick him if he's still there with my, if he's no one, he's the 15th ruck there and he's still there. I'm picking him, but I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not feeling it this year.
Yeah, I just don't think a dimmer-led team that's bought in guys like John Noble, Daniel Rioli to impact straight away. They're desperate to play finals. They have to play finals. I know everyone's going to say that. They have to play finals. I just don't think a team that's been as aggressive in the off-season as they were is going to potentially hinder their ceiling by playing developing ruckman over a guy like Jared Witts. I just think if he's on your list, and it's for a range of things. It's for not only his skill, but it's for his leadership. And given how Dimmer has behaved in the past with his ruckman, giving Nank the captaincy, I think he was still there when Nank was captain. I would just suspect that Witts is locked in to play as many games as he's available for.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, let us know where you've adjusted Sean Darcy to in the comments as well after looking at his Instagram post. So he's top 5 for all of us, I've heard. Here
hit us up with that 11 to, may as well go 11 to 18. Just hit us with the rest of them.
Yep, tier 6 at 11, we've got Darcy Cameron, followed by Kieran Briggs. Tier 7 at number 13 and 14 is Riley O'Brien and Oscar McInerney. They're your, what they're going to give you tier. And then tier 8 through 9 is Jordan Sweet, Sam Draper, Maddie Flynn, and Toby Conway. That's your top 18. And I think that's one ruckman from every team as well. Ideally, the main ruckman for each team.
Yeah, it's a solid list. I think Kieran Briggs could be... I haven't heard too much out of his camp. I thought I saw somewhere he was injured at one point in the preseason. I need to look more into that. I'd be keen on a Kieran Briggs bounce back season, and he'd be probably one that I'd be very interested in drafting a bit later because he's probably off a lot of people's radars. Had a stinker of a start last season, kind of came home a bit stronger, but Briggsy could be one that I'd be interested taking in those sort of mid to later rounds if I wanted to kind of not completely punt rucks, but get a guy a bit later on.
Agreed.
Sorry?
Absolutely agreed. Yep.
And a player I have a little bit higher, just looking here, I have Darcy Cameron quite a bit higher in my ranks this year, just because I think he's pretty much going to have to be the guy that's in there all the time now. I don't think they're going to really roll with the Mason Cox split as much. I think we saw him sort of perform really well towards the end of the year when he had that solo ruck, and I think it's just his time to kind of take the reins a bit more. That's just also a bit of a gut feel there, Patch. We do like gut feels. And then the other one, Jordan Sweet, I've got at 11. You've got him down at 15, and I heard him on a podcast, good friend of mine, the Keeper League pod. Jordan Sweet mentioned that he is interested this year in playing a bit more around the ground, and he said he's basically got the license to go and get disposals more, get the footy more, which he didn't have in his kind of first season at the helm last year. So, Jordan Sweet's one that I'd be kind of interested in as well, picking up a little bit later in the draft. Patch, your thoughts on these?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Sweet, I'm very intrigued in. I think he's the number one role, but like just the spectre of Ivan Soldo looming. What do they do with him? Do they play him as a backup ruck? Does Sweet spend a bit more time forward? I'm intrigued. I don't dislike him, but yeah, I'd be wanting to take him really late in a draft on that front. Darcy Cameron, I agree with you. I've got him at 6. I've got him ahead of Nank. I've got him behind Marshall, but I think, we know what we're going to get. Last year will basically be the same as this year. He's, barring injury, should play every game. And I just think he's kind of reliable and neat, and I'm happy to pick him up with my, if he's there at my 8th pick, then I'll do a little bit of a swerve and then stop worrying about the rucks.
Quick Bombers thoughts on Sam Draper as well, Patch, as a Bombers man?
I want Nick Bryan to be the number one ruck.
Me too.
I think Draper's a better forward. Is he a good forward? I don't know, but he's a better forward than Bryan is. So I think what Brad Scott will do as a lover of playing two rucks will just start Draper forward and start Bryan in the ruck and then sub Bryan out at 3/4 time. So I'm not touching Essendon's rucks, and if you are, then you're insane.
No, they're probably the hardest ruck lineup to read and as someone who has handcuffed them in one of our SuperCoach Keeper Leagues, Patch, I just need one of them to be good, not both of them to be bad, which is what I've experienced to date.
That won't be changing.
I've just got them in there at 16th, Sam Draper, because I think as a starting spot, he's probably slightly ahead Bryan. You're going to be able to get Bryan later in drafts. But I've got him just ahead of Matt Flynn for reasons, and ahead of Toby Conway because Toby Conway might not even play for Geelong. He should, but God, it might still be Reece Stanley. I don't even know if he's on an AFL list anymore. He might still play.
It could be Blitzarves. It could be Sam de Conning. It could be, they could bring Mitch Edwards in. Brad Close could play in the ruck for them. They're just as bad as Bevo, and they should got more flack for it.
The Jordan Sweet point you made, Dossie's interesting. If he does have that license, I'd probably actually push him ahead of Riley O'Brien and Oscar McInerney in that you know what you're going to get tier. Because his issue is that he's basically the pedo of Port Adelaide in that he's locked to you are in the centre square and anything else is not allowed. If he's got a bit more flexibility, then yeah, he probably does jump in value above those slightly older battlers in O'Brien and McInerney.
Yeah, I'm growing interest after that quote. So that was on the Keep Leg. It was an interview. It was only like a 10-minute interview. So if you're keen to listen, go check out that pod. The other thing that I would say, let's just quickly touch on Matt Flynn because he's talked about massively in classic circles. You've got him at 17th. So essentially you're saying if you are deciding to punt rucks and pick up a ruck super late, you reckon Matt Flynn may be available there, and maybe the classic sort of impact could hurt how high he does go, but I think you'd be pretty safe getting him late. What do you think he can produce for us this year? You've got him 17.
If you're picking Matt Flynn, you're probably also taking like a Bailey Williams and sitting him on the bench. someone like that. I'm not really sure. The reason I've got him there, I think he does get first crack at the main ruck role for West Coast. But we know what the risks are. We know the risks are. He's played 4 games, 9 games, 12 games, and 12 games in the past. He's had flashes of moments where he's scored well. He's never averaged above 88 in his career in a season. But if you're punting rucks and he's available there late in a draft, you take him at, he's going to average 80 plus points, which is decent, but you will need to handcuff him. Yeah.
Yeah. And sleepers, we're going through sleepers again.
let's avoid sleepers on this one. Yeah, I think I'd be probably happy taking anyone in that sort of top 10 range. I think drafting a ruck's always just confusing to me. I don't know where the best spot to draft them is. I think I'll be happy, as you said, Cherry or Gawn early. If not, I'm almost happy sort of punting the ruck usually, and I'll just find that sweet spot in the middle of a draft where to pick up my guy. And I'll be picking Sean Darcy.
Sweet spot.
Unless it's Sean Darcy first round. Sean Darcy first round, or that sweet Jordan sweet spot later on. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for listening, everyone, and for Lekdog and Patch for joining us again on this RUCK Draft Rankings episode. You can check out the full list, full top 100 ranks that Lekdog has put together on codesports.com.au. Go check out the article there. And then, guys, leave a rating and review if you're enjoying a bit more draft content this preseason on Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening. You can watch on Code Sports YouTube as well. See our beautiful faces on there. But thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll be back to finish the rankings next week. We're going to be going through the forwards and defenders. We'll see you then.